The cameras were meant to capture a night of royal elegance, but one brief moment changed the conversation. As Catherine, Princess of Wales, entered wearing a tiara bound to royal memory, attention shifted toward Queen Camilla's reaction. Was it simple admiration, or did that glittering arrival expose something far deeper inside the monarchy? At first glance, it looked like another grand royal evening, chandeliers burning above polished floors, guests moving through the formal rhythm of protocol, and the British royal family presenting itself with the calm precision the world expects. But royal history has always been written in details. A glance, a jewel, a pause before a smile. And on this occasion, according to royal watchers, one captured expression became the detail everyone wanted to understand. The focus was Catherine, Princess of Wales, arriving with the kind of quiet composure that has made her one of the most closely watched figures in the modern monarchy. She was not simply entering a room. She was stepping into a moment filled with memory, expectation, and symbolism. The tiara she wore was not just an ornament chosen for a formal evening. It carried echoes of queens, of family history, of Diana, Princess of Wales, and of the late Queen Elizabeth II's long reign. That is why the atmosphere changed the moment she appeared. In royal life, jewels are never only jewels. They are part of a language the monarchy has used for generations. A tiara can honor the past, confirm a person's place in the present, and quietly suggest what the future may hold. To the casual viewer, it may sparkle under palace lights. To royal observers, it speaks. It tells them who has been trusted with history, who is being positioned for visibility, and who is being drawn closer to the symbolic heart of the crown. So when Catherine entered wearing a piece so deeply connected to royal legacy, the reaction was immediate. Cameras followed her. Commentators studied the choice. Viewers replayed the moment again and again. But then attention moved toward Queen Camilla, seated within the same ceremonial world, carrying her own royal history and her own carefully built position beside King Charles III. Reports and online discussion have focused on what cameras appeared to capture as Catherine arrived. Some viewers believe Camilla's expression showed admiration. Others thought it revealed surprise, reflection, or the complicated emotional weight that follows any jewel linked to Diana and the late Queen. Buckingham Palace has not offered any explanation for the moment, and it would be irresponsible to claim private feelings as fact. But the reason people kept watching was not only because of Camilla's face. It was because of what that face was placed against. Two royal women, two different journeys, one room filled with history. Queen Camilla represents the present reign. Her position beside Charles is a result of a long and difficult public journey, one shaped by scrutiny, endurance, and gradual acceptance. She has had to build her role through patience and consistency, often under the weight of memories the public has never fully released. Her jewels, her place at state occasions, and her presence beside the king all help reinforce the dignity of the current monarchy. Catherine represents something different. She is the future queen, the wife of Prince William, the Prince of Wales, and the mother of the next generation of royal heirs. Her public image is built around continuity, family, restraint, and a kind of quiet resilience that has become even more powerful after her health challenges and gradual return to duty. When she appears at a major royal event wearing a historic tiara, many viewers do not simply see glamour. They see the future of the crown being gently introduced. That contrast is what made the moment so compelling. Was the attention on Catherine simply the natural response to a beautiful royal appearance, or was something larger happening beneath the surface? Was the tiara chosen only because it suited the occasion, or because it carried a message about legacy, recovery, and future queenship? And if Camilla noticed the weight of that symbolism, what did she see that the public may also have sensed? The answer is not simple, because royal symbolism rarely has only one meaning. Catherine could have been honoring tradition. She could have been paying silent respect to the late Queen's memory. She could also have been reinforcing her own place in the long royal chain that connects Queen Mary, Queen Elizabeth II, Diana, and now the Princess of Wales. None of those meanings cancels the others. In fact, together they make the moment more powerful. For many royal viewers, the emotional pull came from Diana's shadow. Any tiara associated with Diana carries a history that cannot be separated from public memory. It reminds people of glamour, vulnerability, heartbreak, and the complicated relationship between royal duty and private pain. When Catherine wears such a piece, she does not erase that history. She carries it forward into a different chapter, one shaped less by turbulence and more by careful steadiness. That may be why the moment felt so significant. Catherine's appearance suggested continuity without drama. She did not need to make a speech. She did not need to draw attention with words. The tiara did the speaking, and the cameras did the rest. But for Camilla, that same symbolism can never be entirely neutral. The public has long connected her story to the emotional legacy of Diana, and even after years of royal service, that history remains part of how many people interpret her public appearances. So when Catherine arrived wearing a jewel that stirred memories of Diana and the late Queen, viewers naturally wondered whether Camilla's reaction carried more meaning than an ordinary glance. It may not have. It may have been nothing more than a fleeting expression caught at an unfortunate angle. Royal footage is often overanalyzed, and a single second can be turned into a story far larger than the person intended. But sometimes, the reason a moment becomes powerful is not because it proves something. It becomes powerful because it reminds people of everything already beneath the surface. And beneath this moment was a monarchy in transition. King Charles III is still the monarch. Camilla is still queen. William and Catherine are still preparing for a future that has not yet arrived. But royal life does not wait for official announcements before the public begins to sense change. It happens through images, through ceremonial choices, through who receives the historic jewels, who wears them with confidence, and who becomes the figure viewers instinctively watch when the palace doors open. That is why this scene has continued to attract attention. It was not simply about a tiara. It was about memory, position, and the quiet competition between past and future meanings inside the same room. Catherine's entrance felt like a statement of recovery and readiness. Camilla's captured reaction, whatever it truly meant, gave the moment an emotional edge that palace officials could never fully control. And once that question appeared, the story moved into far more sensitive territory because the real issue was not only what Catherine wore. It was what that tiara seemed to say about who now carries the monarchy's most powerful symbols into the future. What that tiara seemed to say was powerful because royal jewels are not passed into public view without consequence. They do not simply complete an outfit. They place a royal woman inside a chain of memory, duty, and expectation. And when Catherine wore a piece so closely tied to the late Queen and Diana, the meaning immediately reached beyond the beauty of the evening itself. This is why the moment became larger than a captured reaction. It was not only about whether Queen Camilla looked surprised, reflective, or simply caught in an ordinary second of ceremony. It was about the environment around that second. Catherine's entrance brought together three emotional histories at once: the late Queen's legacy, Diana's enduring public memory, and Catherine's own return to a more visible royal role after a deeply difficult period. When those histories meet in the same room, even silence begins to feel significant. For the monarchy, that kind of symbolism can be both a gift and a risk. It is a gift because Catherine's presence reassures many viewers that the future of the crown still has grace, discipline, and emotional warmth. She carries herself in a way that feels composed without being cold, modern without rejecting tradition, and visible without appearing eager for attention. In a time when public trust is fragile, that combination matters. It gives the monarchy something it urgently needs: a future figure who can be admired without seeming disruptive. But it is also a risk because every symbol given to Catherine increases the public's sense that she is already stepping closer to the center. A tiara associated with Diana does not arrive empty. A jewel connected to Queen Elizabeth II does not carry neutral meaning. When Catherine wears such pieces, many viewers see continuity, but they also see comparison. They remember who wore the jewels before her. They ask who is worthy to carry them now. And they begin to measure the women of the present against the women of royal memory. That is where Camilla's position becomes delicate. As queen, she holds formal status beside King Charles III, but royal status and emotional symbolism are not always the same thing. Camilla's journey has been long, difficult, and in many ways remarkable. She has earned a place in the current reign through endurance and service. Yet the public's relationship with her is still shaped by decades of complicated feeling. No palace statement can completely erase that history, and no grand ceremony can fully control how people respond when Diana's legacy enters the room through a jewel worn by Catherine. So when cameras appeared to capture Camilla as Catherine arrived, the world did what it always does with royal imagery. It began to interpret. Some saw dignity. Some saw discomfort. Some saw the queen observing a future queen being embraced by history in a way that felt almost effortless. None of those interpretations can be proven from one expression, and it would be wrong to claim certainty. But the fact that so many people believe the moment mattered shows how sensitive the visual balance inside the monarchy has become. Because this was not simply one woman wearing a tiara. It was a future queen wearing memory. That distinction changes everything. Catherine's use of royal jewels has increasingly become part of a wider story about preparation. Each major appearance seems to place her more securely inside the ceremonial identity of the crown. She is not only attending events, she is being visually woven into the monarchy's historic language. The jewels help the public understand her future before it formally arrives. They allow viewers to see her not just as the Princess of Wales, but as the woman who may one day stand beside William when the next reign begins. That is why palace observers pay such close attention to these choices. In royal life, gradual acceptance is often created through repetition. A future queen wears a historic piece once, and it becomes a moment. She wears it again, and it becomes association. Over time, the public stops asking why she is wearing it and begins to feel that it belongs naturally within her image. That is how monarchy prepares people emotionally, not through sudden instruction, but through familiar symbols appearing again and again until they feel inevitable. And this may explain why Catherine's entrance carried such force. After months of concern surrounding her health and recovery, her return to a grand royal stage was already emotionally charged. But the tiara gave that return a second meaning. It suggested not only survival, but restored authority. It told viewers that Catherine had not come back diminished. She had returned into history itself, carrying the kind of jewel that reminds the public of queens, duty, and the long endurance of the crown. For William, that image also matters. The Prince of Wales is not only preparing for his own future role. He is preparing the public to see Catherine as part of that future. Their strength as a royal couple depends on more than affection or popularity. It depends on the belief that they can carry the institution together. When Catherine appears in a historic tiara with calm confidence, she strengthens that belief without needing to speak. She becomes, visually, part of the monarchy's answer to uncertainty. But where does that leave the current queen? That is the question hovering beneath the public debate. Camilla's own jewels carry history, too. They connect her to the present reign, to the late queen's collection, and to the authority of her position beside Charles. Yet Catherine's jewels often seem to carry a more emotional public charge, because they are tied not only to monarchy, but to memory, sympathy, and the future. That difference can create a contrast the palace may not intend, but cannot completely avoid. In one room, Camilla may represent recognition hard-earned over time. Catherine may represent destiny, still unfolding. One reflects the complicated path to acceptance. The other reflects the carefully protected promise of what comes next. Neither role is simple. Neither should be reduced to rivalry. But when they appear side by side beneath the same palace lights, the cameras do not only record elegance. They record the tension between present authority and future imagination. That is why the reaction to this moment has continued to grow. People are not only debating Camilla's expression, they are debating what Catherine's visibility means now. Has she become the monarchy's most powerful symbol of renewal? Is the palace allowing historic jewels to quietly prepare the public for her future queenship? And if that is true, how does the current reign manage the emotional force gathering around the next one? The answer may lie in the way the monarchy handles symbols going forward. If Catherine continues to appear in jewels tied to the late Queen and Diana, royal watchers will almost certainly view each appearance as part of a larger pattern. If Camilla's role remains visibly strong beside Charles, the palace may be trying to balance present dignity with future preparation. But if Catherine increasingly becomes the figure around whom historic memory and public hope converge, then the deeper shift will become harder to ignore. And once that possibility entered the conversation, the story moved beyond one captured glance. It became a question of whether the tiara was simply honoring the past, or whether it was quietly revealing who the monarchy now trusts to carry its most emotional legacy forward. That question is where the story becomes far more layered, because royal legacy is never carried by a jewel alone. It is carried by the person the public believes can wear that jewel without being overwhelmed by its history. And in Catherine's case, the power of the moment came from the fact that she appeared not as someone borrowing the past, but as someone being quietly accepted into it. That is what made the tiara so important. It did not simply decorate her return. It placed her inside a line of royal memory that many viewers already understand emotionally. Queen Mary represented dynastic tradition. Queen Elizabeth II represented endurance and duty. Diana represented beauty, pain, vulnerability, and public affection. Catherine, standing beneath the same symbolic weight, appeared to offer something different again: stability after uncertainty. This is the deeper connection royal watchers began to notice. Catherine's role is no longer defined only by her position beside William. Increasingly, it is being shaped through what the monarchy allows her to carry in public. Historic jewels, major ceremonial appearances, diplomatic occasions, and carefully framed images all build a story before anyone says it aloud. The palace does not need to announce that the future is being prepared if the public can already see it forming. And this is where the contrast with Camilla becomes sensitive. The queen has her own place in the royal story, one built through endurance and years of gradual acceptance. But the emotional language surrounding her is different. Camilla's role often asks the public to accept a complicated past as part of the present. Catherine's role asks the public to imagine a stable future. Those are not the same kind of symbolic tasks, and when both women appear in the same room, wearing history in different ways, the cameras naturally capture more than elegance. They capture transition. That may explain why the captured reaction became so widely discussed. If Camilla's expression appeared thoughtful or difficult to read, it was not because one moment could reveal a private truth. It was because viewers already understood the emotional background surrounding that room. A tiara connected to Diana will always carry echoes that cannot be fully controlled. A future queen wearing it confidently will always stir conversation about what has changed, what has endured, and who now holds the public's deepest affection. But was this simply memory returning through a jewel, or was the monarchy deliberately allowing Catherine to inherit a more powerful visual role? That possibility is what makes the moment so consequential. Catherine's appearances after her health challenges have been watched with a different kind of feeling. Before, people admired her composure. Now, many see resilience within it. Before, her presence at state events suggested elegance and duty. Now it suggests recovery, steadiness, and renewed purpose. The same tiara that once connected her to royal history now also connects her to personal survival, and that gives the image a new emotional force. For the palace, that emotional force is valuable. The monarchy needs figures who can make tradition feel human. It needs ceremony, but it also needs warmth. It needs historic symbols, but it also needs someone the public believes can carry them sincerely. Catherine's strength lies in the way she makes these heavy symbols feel less distant. When she wears a tiara linked to the late Queen and Diana, the public does not only see diamonds. Many see continuity, softened by familiarity. That is a powerful form of modern royal authority. Yet it also creates pressure. The more Catherine becomes associated with the monarchy's most emotional symbols, the more attention gathers around her future role. Every formal appearance becomes part of a wider pattern. Every jewel choice becomes open to interpretation. Every glance from another royal figure becomes a possible clue in a larger story of influence, memory, and succession. Whether the palace intends it or not, Catherine's visibility now carries consequences. For William, this pattern strengthens the image of the next reign. A future king does not stand alone in public imagination. He is understood through the family beside him, and Catherine's symbolic authority helps shape how viewers imagine his eventual monarchy. She brings the emotional continuity that law alone cannot provide. She makes the future feel less abstract, less distant, and more personally reassuring to audiences who have followed the royal family for decades. But for Charles, the situation requires careful balance. His reign must remain the center of royal authority, while the Wales family grows in public importance. If Catherine becomes too dominant in symbolic terms, commentators may begin to speak of the next era before the present one has fully settled. If her role is held back too much, the monarchy risks losing one of its strongest sources of public confidence. The The king must allow the future to shine without making the current reign appear overshadowed. That is a difficult calculation, and the tiara moment made it visible. Because what viewers saw, or believed they saw, was not merely Catherine entering a room. They saw a future queen stepping into royal memory with unusual calm. They saw Camilla positioned within the present, facing a symbol that inevitably touched the past. They saw the monarchy trying to honor history while preparing for what comes next. And they saw how quickly one image could turn private palace choreography into public debate. This is why serious royal observers hesitate to dismiss the moment as simple glamour. It may not prove tension. It may not confirm rivalry. It may not reveal what anyone privately felt. But it does show that the monarchy's emotional center is shifting in subtle ways. Catherine's place in the story is becoming more than supportive. She is increasingly becoming one of the figures through whom the crown explains its future. And once that possibility becomes visible, the next question becomes more urgent. If Catherine is now carrying the monarchy's most powerful symbols with such public confidence, what does that mean for the women around her, the king who authorizes those appearances, and the future reign quietly taking shape behind the palace walls? To understand why this moment may matter so much, we have to look at the one development that changed the entire direction of the story. The development that changed the entire direction of a story was not the tiara alone, but the way the public responded to it. Because once Catherine appeared beneath that historic royal symbol, the conversation no longer stayed inside the ballroom. It moved outward, into newspapers, royal commentary, social media, and living rooms across Britain, America, Canada, Australia, and beyond, where viewers began asking the same question in different ways. Was this simply a beautiful royal appearance? Or had the monarchy just shown the world where its emotional future now rests? That is where the pressure began to rise. Palace events are designed to look effortless, but their meaning is never accidental. A state banquet is not only about diplomacy. It is also a stage on which the royal family shows order, hierarchy, and continuity. When Catherine entered wearing a tiara, so closely linked to the late Queen and Diana, the image created a bridge across generations. It pulled the memory of past royal women into the present and placed it directly onto the future queen. For the palace, that kind of image is incredibly valuable. It reassures the public that history is not being abandoned. It suggests that the next chapter of the monarchy will not arrive as a break from tradition, but as a continuation of it. Catherine's presence made that message feel gentle rather than forced, because she has rarely appeared to demand symbolic authority. Instead, authority has seemed to gather around her through patience, timing, and public trust. But the same image also carried risk. Because if Catherine becomes the figure most naturally associated with the monarchy's emotional legacy, then every other royal woman in the room is placed in comparison with her. That is not necessarily the palace's intention. It is simply how royal imagery works. The public sees the jewels, remembers the past, studies the present, and begins imagining the future. This is why Camilla's captured reaction became so widely discussed. It remains unconfirmed what she felt in that moment, and no serious interpretation should pretend to read her private thoughts from a few seconds of footage. But the reason the image gained such power is that it appeared to show the current queen watching a future queen step into one of the most emotionally loaded symbols of modern royal history. That is a difficult visual for the palace to manage. Camilla's position is formal, senior, and established. She is the queen beside Charles, and her role in the current reign carries dignity and constitutional clarity. Yet Catherine's symbolic power operates in another register. It is not only formal. It is emotional. It is connected to public affection, Diana's memory, the late Queen's legacy, and the promise of William's future reign. Those layers make her visibility unusually potent, and that potency is becoming harder to contain. Royal observers have often noted that Catherine's strongest influence comes from restraint. She does not need to speak loudly for a moment to feel significant. She does not need to compete for attention in order to become the center of it. In fact, the more controlled and composed she appears, the more the public seems to read strength into her silence. That is why her tiara appearance became more than a fashion moment. It became a visual argument for future stability. But was the palace prepared for how strongly people would interpret it? That is the strategic question now. If the monarchy deliberately allowed Catherine to wear such a meaningful piece, it may have been sending a carefully measured message of continuity. But if the public reaction exceeded the palace's expectations, then officials may now be facing a more complicated reality. Catherine's symbolic rise may be moving faster in the public imagination than the institution can comfortably explain. For Charles, that creates a delicate challenge. His reign must remain the central chapter of the monarchy, not merely a bridge to William. Yet every powerful image of Catherine in historic jewels reminds the public that the next chapter is already visible. The king must allow that future to develop because the monarchy depends on it. But he must also prevent the current reign from appearing overshadowed before its work is complete. For William, the image strengthens the story of the family he will one day lead. A future king needs more than constitutional legitimacy. He needs public confidence, and Catherine helps provide that confidence through the way she embodies composure, continuity, and emotional steadiness. When she enters a room wearing a tiara tied to the monarchy's most remembered women, she does not simply support William's future. She helps define it. For Camilla, however, the consequences are more sensitive. If viewers begin to see Catherine as the royal woman who carries the late queen's symbolic inheritance most naturally, then the queen's own role may require even more careful presentation. That does not mean Camilla is diminished. It does not mean rivalry is confirmed. But it does mean the palace must balance two different kinds of authority, the authority of the present queen and the authority of the future queen in public imagination. That balance is where the story becomes serious, because monarchy depends on more than official rank. It depends on recognition. The public has to recognize who belongs at the center of the story. They have to feel continuity before it is formally required. They have to believe that the next royal generation can carry the weight of history without breaking under it. Catherine's tiara moment, if interpreted in that way, may have shown that many viewers already believe she can. And that belief changes everything. Once the public begins to see Catherine as the natural carrier of royal memory, every future appearance becomes part of a larger test. What tiara will she wear next? Which jewels will be entrusted to her? How will Camilla be positioned beside her? How will Charles manage the imagery of present reign and future reign sharing the same room? These are not small questions in a monarchy where images often become history before words are ever spoken. The strongest turning point, then, was not Camilla's reaction by itself. It was the public realization that Catherine can enter a room and instantly turn royal memory into future meaning. That is a power no palace statement can manufacture. It has to be earned slowly, through years of trust, discipline, and emotional connection. And once that power became visible, the story moved into its most consequential stage. Because the real issue was no longer whether one camera caught one expression at one royal event. The real issue was whether the crown's most emotional symbols are now beginning to gather around Catherine in a way that may reshape how the monarchy's future is understood. If the crown's most emotional symbols are now gathering around Catherine, then the meaning of that night becomes much larger than one tiara, one entrance, or one expression caught by a camera. It becomes a window into how the monarchy is quietly teaching the public to understand its next chapter before that chapter officially begins. That is why this moment has continued to echo. The palace may never explain exactly why a certain jewel was chosen, what Camilla thought in that fleeting second, or whether Catherine's appearance was designed to send a message beyond elegance and protocol. But monarchy does not always require explanation to create meaning. Sometimes the meaning is created by the image itself, and once the image settles into public memory, it becomes part of the royal story whether the palace intended it or not. Catherine's entrance mattered because it placed her inside a powerful emotional inheritance. She was not only wearing diamonds and pearls, she was carrying associations with the late Queen's steadiness, Diana's public affection, and the long tradition of royal women whose appearances became part of national memory. That combination is rare. It gives Catherine a symbolic language that feels both historic and personal, both formal and emotionally accessible. And that may be the true strength of her position now. The monarchy needs tradition, but tradition alone can feel distant. It needs duty, but duty alone can feel cold. Catherine offers something in between. She gives the ancient symbols of the crown a human face, a sense of warmth, recovery, motherhood, patience, and quiet resolve. That is why her return to major royal occasions has been watched with such care. The public is not only looking to see whether she is present, They are looking to see what her presence now means. For Charles, this is both a gift and a challenge. His reign depends on continuity, and Catherine helps strengthen that continuity by making the future feel calm and prepared. But every time she becomes the emotional focus of a major royal image, the current reign must share attention with the next one. That does not mean there is conflict. It means the monarchy is doing what monarchies have always had to do, allowing the future to become visible before the present has finished its work. For Camilla, the situation is more delicate. Her position is secure in formal terms, but royal life is not measured only by titles. It is also measured by public feeling, and public feeling has always been complicated around her. When Catherine wears a tiara connected to the most beloved and remembered women of the modern royal family, it naturally creates comparison. Not necessarily a cruel comparison, not necessarily a fair one, but a comparison that exists because memory does not disappear simply because time has passed. That is what made the camera moment so powerful. It was not proof of jealousy. It was not proof of rivalry. It was not a secret confession written across anyone's face. The responsible interpretation is much more careful. It was a brief visual moment that became powerful because of the history surrounding it. Viewers brought their own memories into that room. They remembered Diana. They remembered Queen Elizabeth II. They saw Catherine standing in that lineage. And then they looked at Camilla, whose own story has always existed beside those memories. That is why the debate will not end quickly, because this was never just about whether Camilla looked surprised or reflective. It was about what happens when the past, present, and future of the monarchy appear in the same frame. The past was carried in the jewel. The present was represented by the Queen beside the King. The future entered through Catherine, composed, luminous, and increasingly difficult to see as merely supporting. Royal observers will now watch what comes next with sharper attention. They will watch which tiaras Catherine wears at future state banquets. They will watch how often pieces connected to the late Queen or Diana appear in her public image. They will watch how Camilla is positioned beside Charles when Catherine is also present. They will watch William's role in those moments, because the image of the future king and queen together is becoming one of the monarchy's strongest forms of reassurance. And perhaps that is the larger transformation happening behind palace walls. The monarchy is not only managing events anymore. It is managing emotional succession. The line of succession is written in law, but emotional succession is written through symbols, photographs, public trust, and repeated moments that teach people where to place their confidence. Catherine's tiara appearance may have mattered because it showed that this emotional succession is already underway. Still, there are two ways to read the night. One interpretation is simple. Catherine wore a beautiful historic tiara to honor royal tradition. Camilla was briefly filmed, and the public read too much into an ordinary moment. That may be partly true. Royal footage is often overanalyzed, and a single second should never be treated as the whole truth. But another interpretation is harder to dismiss. Perhaps the moment became powerful because it revealed a shift already forming in public imagination. Catherine is no longer viewed only as the graceful Princess of Wales. She is increasingly seen as the woman who may carry the monarchy's most emotional legacy into the next reign. And once the public begins to see her that way, every jewel she wears becomes more than decoration. It becomes preparation. So what do you think? Was this simply one elegant royal appearance, or does it point to a much larger shift inside the monarchy? Was Catherine honoring the late Queen and Diana, or was the palace quietly allowing the future queen to step closer to the symbolic heart of the crown? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep royal analysis, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next documentary-style royal story. Because in the royal family, the future is not always announced with words. Sometimes, it arrives quietly beneath a sacred tiara while the cameras capture everything.